Okay, we're about to start a new painting tutorial. So, as I said in the intro, we're just painting up this power sword. It's been a little bit of a request, so I've only got this bit of the model just here, as we can see. The rest will be for my Ultramarines Captain and Gravis armor later on, but I'm just going to paint the sword now. So, because the armor is going to be blue, I'm going to do this in a green color. So, yeah, so anyway, first things first, obviously prime the model black, and then the next thing is getting the base color on. So using my medium layer brush, get that ready. And what I do before is just tell you a little bit about the colors that I'm going to be using. So you can see them just along the bottom of the screen here. So there's a lot of things I'm going to be using. The base will be Stegadon Scale Green, Kabalite Green, Warpstone Glow, Sybarite Green, Fenrisian Grey, Ulthuan Grey, and I've also got Lahmian Medium here as well, which I'll be using to help with some of the blending, as you can see. Now I've also got a wet palette. The wet palette will help quite a lot. And this, as you can see, I've been using it for a few other things. I haven't got a fresh bit of baking tray in there, so that's all right. So anyway, yeah, first thing we're gonna do is just layer the base on. So give the paint a good shake, as you can see. Always got to do that. And I only need a little bit just onto the palette here, as we can see. And then the next thing I'll do, just as per normal, is just layer it on. So you don't want to go too heavy with this because there's so many layers going to go on this model. You don't want to go too thick. Now this can also go over the pommel there. That doesn't matter. And I'm painting in upward strokes as well. On the brush. Okay, as we can see there. Here we go, and we're just getting that. So we're just pulling the brush strokes up along the blade as well. And this is also going to be a bit prevalent later on. Just make sure we get it on there nice, good coat. Just get it up the side there and up there. Now, some of the things you really want to take notice of when we start doing this is one, don't make the paint too thick, because if the paint's too thick, you're going to start having areas that dry and glob up a little bit, and it'll start to make things a bit uneven when we start to actually do the layers on this sword. And there's going to be a lot of layers. Now I can already see just a little bit down here. Needs a bit more. And it's also going to help with the highlighting much later on. So we just pull it up. And what this will do as well will help get rid of any excess. So we just push any of the excess paint up the blade. So now we can see we've got a nice even coat. This will only take a little bit to dry, but that's all good. Now this forms the base of the model, or the base of the colors that we're using. So it's quite a deep color, but it's not 100% what we're going to be going for in this particular model. So we can just see it there, nice and drying. Just make sure that's all zoomed in. And we'll come back as soon as that's dried. Okay, now the base color has dried on the blade. So what I've done is I've put another very light coat, a very thin coat on there. So you won't really even notice the color too much at the moment. It looks pretty basic, which it is. The secret behind this as well, as you'll see as this video progresses, is that lots of thin coats it's what's gonna make this. It's what's gonna make it work in the long run. So you got to look at the big scheme of things. So as you start adding paints, you'll be sitting there going, this doesn't seem right, this doesn't look right, this doesn't feel right. I want to make the coats thicker because it'll make the job go a lot quicker. This is just time and patience. That's all this is, okay? So the next thing we're going to do, so I've put out some of the colors here onto the wet palette so I can give myself a bit of space now. There we go, just move them across. So what I've done is I've got the Stegadon Stale Green there, Scale, not Stale, Scale Green, and the Kabalite Green. So the next thing I'm going to do is going to add on my next lot of layers. So I'm going to use a medium glaze brush, and I'm just going to get a bit of this to here, and I'm going to start pulling these across to mix these colors. So this will be the first these colors mix. So I just keep mixing until I find the sort of color that I want. And once I get it, which I think that seems about right now. So this is going to be judged on your eye as well. So you want it to be dark, but not too dark. Now I'm going to get a bit, and I'm going to put it onto my palette here. So I'm not going to go from the wet palette. I'm going to clean the brush. Now I'm going to get the Lahmian medium, and I'm going to actually water it down with this because it's going to provide a better consistency. So I soak it into the brush and I put it in. I'll probably do a bit more. So you've got to clean the brush again because you don't want to pull any of that paint to your Lahmian medium, and get it to a very milky sort of consistency. Very, very milky. So it's taken me about 3 or 4 goes of this to get it in. There we go. Now that is pretty good. Now what you want to do is you want to get most of this off your brush. You really don't want much on there. So as you can see, from here, I really don't have much on there. It looks like it's nothing. So this is going to be the top of the blade here. From almost the middle, I'm going to drag this across. You can't even really see it. That's how small it's going to be. And then probably about 3 or 4 mils, I leave a gap, and then I pull this across. I can go over everything here. That's okay. Get it into the recesses, get it through there. Really doesn't look like anything at this moment. And then from the mid blade, just pull it across. There we go. It's going to cover the most of it. Now we're just going to do the same on the other side. So hopefully we can see here. And from about the mid blade, we pull it across. So it's very light, not much paint on there at all. Pull it across. If there's any excess, it should sort of flick over to the side. And then we do the same from about mid, and we just pull it across yet again. Now, if you find that your glaze brush runs out of paint, that's fine. And then we just pull this across, just get into there. It doesn't matter too much if you go over. That is fine, because when we choose here as well and we pull it across, it'll cover that. There we go. So you want to cover most of these. And all we do is we flip back to the original side, as you can hopefully see, and we're just going to repeat this process a few times because it should dry by that stage. We choose the middle, we start to pull it across. Hopefully you can see that on there. And we just pull it across. That's all we do. Not much paint on there. We just keep pulling it across. And then we pull it across. So this is something you're going to have to repeat several times. You might have to get a bit more Lahmian medium in there as well to help it flow. We just pull it across. If it doesn't pull across, then we just sort of paint in a downwards motion to get it in there. We get a bit more. We just pull it across. And this is most of what this is going to be for the rest of the tutorial. It's just literally pulling the paint across. As you can see, there's a little bit drying there, so I'm just going to leave that to dry in here, because that'll actually create a bit of a pothole, is the best way to sort of call it. If a bit of paint's drying and you sort of run over it, it'll pull it apart and it creates like a bit of a pothole effect. Okay, so that'll be up to about the middle. The other bit's just dried, so you can start to pull that across now. Might need a bit more Lahmian medium to help improve the flow, but we just pull that across. There we go, and that's the first lot done. So from this at the moment, you can barely notice it, but what this is doing is starting to have it take shape. Okay, so it might be a little bit fuzzy in the tree there, but it's starting to take shape. The base colors are starting to take shape, and this is going to be quite dark to start with, but you'll see how we start to actually bring this up. So the next thing we're going to do is just get a bit of the Kabalite Green, and we're just going to pretty much add that to that mix, so it's going to really lighten it up. And we're just going to put this down on here onto the palette, as much of it as we can get. So we're starting to go lighter with the color. Not a huge amount, but it's some. All right, here we go. So Lahmian medium, add it in. So you probably want 2/3 of a paint brush into this. 2 or 3 strokes into it. There we go. All right, so we're just going to keep doing this process over and over. That's essentially all that this tutorial is. So we almost go from that halfway, but we just start to do it up a little bit instead. So last time we started here, now we're just starting up the sword a bit. There we go. If there's any extra paint, make sure you get rid of it. You don't want it pooling. there's anything pooling, just get it off your brush. Try and soak it up, because you don't want anything pooling on this model, on this bit of sword. And then from the midpoint here, we just drag it across. There we go, that's starting to build that up. I can start to see it forming here. Hopefully you can sort of start to see it forming. All right, and then onto here. So, where are we? So that'll be the top of the blade. So you wanna, might have accidentally done this the opposite way, but that's okay. Because you want the top of the blade to have the most of the glow effect. So I might have done that the opposite way, but that's okay. It's still pretty light, so start that there. And then midway across. There we go, starting to take shape now. Now this side has started to dry, so we can go back to it and we just layer it all in the same spots. So here we go. Constant layering, guys, constant layering. And then midway. The sort of more watered down your paint is, the better that this will actually flow and get into all the nooks and crannies it needs to. There we go. So now we're starting to really build that shape of the glow. And it can be sort of rough as well, and that's the other good thing about this. It can be a little bit rough because you do actually tie it up later on in the piece. Down through here. In the mid blade through there. So you kind of just keep repeating this in the same spot. You do want to make sure that the paint dries. Now this will actually dry pretty quick, but as you can see, it is starting to form the shape of the glow of the blade. Still quite new in the piece yet. We've still got a long way to go, but this is how we do it. So I'm just going to keep repeating this a couple of times and then we'll come back when we're ready to go on to the next color. All right guys, now the blade has dried with that color on there. You can start to see the shape coming about in this, but we've still got a really long way to go. So the next color is the, I think it's the Warpstone Glow. So we're gonna start to use this, and I'm gonna combine it with the colors here just to, you know, have too much stark transition. So it's gonna be a little bit dark, but that's good. Now that looks about right. So I'm gonna get as much of this as we can onto our palette here. Much of it as we can. Clean off the brush. Now we're just going to water this down using the Lahmian medium. So I'll probably need a few of these on there. There we go. Might get that mix in there going. It's going to need to be quite milky, this mix, especially to make this work, because it's really starting to go up in contrast and color here. You really want to make sure that your paints are very thin for this and you're not carrying too much on your brush, otherwise this will not work. So I've barely got anything on this brush, barely any color. As you can probably see me working here into this bit here, looks like nothing. So I'm going to start down low, but I am creeping up this color contrast and pull it across. Same as before, just keep pulling it across. In the middle here, pull it across. And then down here, pull it across. Now it's not going to seem like a huge amount's changed at the moment, but when this starts to dry, you'll really start to notice the difference in the color contrast. So on the reverse of the blade, it's the same thing. Just pull the color across, that's all it is. Get a little bit more on the brush, pull it across. Now, as you start to add more layers into this as well, you'll start to see the color actually strengthen and build. And you'll start to see all the color really come through. Now this will have to dry. As you can see here, it's actually starting to pool a little bit, which is what we don't want, so we just need to push this across again. So if you do see it starting to pool, like with any sort of ink, as well, you really want to make sure that you get to that before it dries. So here it's starting to pull, and we just get to it before it dries. So it's probably a little bit too much on there to begin with. And as you can see here, it's starting to dry. That pooling isn't too bad. It's a bit consistent, but we can sort of push it around because it hasn't dried 100% yet. All right, and you can see it's really actually starting to pop a little bit now. You can kind of see it. Let me just make sure that's focused for you. Okay, so we're starting to get there. So even when we build these colors up, that's not even everything to do with painting this blade yet. There's actually a lot more steps that really make this thing pop as a piece when you're painting blades this way. That sort of reflecty or crystalline glow. So now that that's sort of dried, we're just going to drag it across again to make that color, you know, seem a lot more bold. And we'll pull this across. Pull it across. Make sure it gets into all those nooks and crannies there. That's where you need it. The good thing about doing these is you don't need a super steady hand as well, but for the end bits of painting this model, you do need a bit of a steady hand, which is the only downside, but it doesn't have to be perfect, as you'll see, because I don't have the steadiest of hands, especially when I'm painting this way. So, let me just keep pulling this across. And the middle part there, pull it across. So we get into everything here as well. All right, there we go. It's really starting to come along. You can actually really start to see the green colors getting stronger here now as well, which I reckon looks really, really cool. We've still got a long way to go on this because we need to really keep adding layers onto this, and they're really thin layers. You might even need to get a bit more of the Lahmian medium in there. Mix it in just to make sure you're going to keep flowing with the color. Don't have too much on the brush yet again. You want really, really little amounts, and just drag it across again. Try and keep getting from the same point. Drag it across again. Drag it across into all the points there. The screen is really starting to pop now. This is looking really cool. I think this is going to be a really cool looking blade by the end of it. Alright, really coming along here. That green is starting to look good. Sort of start to see it here. When you're actually painting the other areas on the blade as well, you see it a lot there too. When you paint all the hilt and other bits, it'll actually contrast really well then, and you can see what you've done to better effect. So here we go, just adding a little bit more before we go on to the next color. All right, and Right, so I'm just going to let that dry now, and then we'll get on to the next color. Alright guys, now this is dried, you can start to see the color is starting to really come through. So the next thing we're going to do is actually just use the Ulthuan Grey by itself. So I'm just going to pull that up onto the palette here. And you can probably guess what I'm going to do next, which is add in the Lahmian medium. So just get some nice big globs of it onto there. You can use water for this as well, but Lahmian medium I think just helps make it a lot better. I stupidly then just added some colour into my Lahmian medium. You do that when you're not thinking. There we go, I managed to get most of it out then. Boom. Alright, so we're just going to keep doing the same thing. I'm going to get most of that off my brush. And because this is a very bold colour now, you'll probably start to see this really shine through. So pull it across. That's going to create a really good effect now. I really like how that's looking already. Warpstone Glow is a really good color for this sort of stuff. So now this is mostly going to be focused towards the middle, like that. Across. This is going to mostly come into here. Yeah, very good. Now you can already see that it's going to be quite bold when that dries. And here, I'm just going to pull it across, so hopefully we can see that on here. There we go. Middle. Very good. There we go. Now this is going to be quite a bold color choice, so you sort of want to let this one dry, but we can already start to see that color that's coming through, which is really, really cool. So I'm just going to add another couple of layers. It's just going to be the same process now as well, because this one's going to take a little bit longer to dry, and you want it to dry. But all it's going to be is, yet again, probably 2 or 3 more layers in the exact same spot, starting from approximately here on the blade, and it's just pulling it across, and then pushing it across there. A lot of push and pull with this paint. And it's the same on the other side. Just push it up, start on one point in the middle, push it to it, and then sort of work it so it sits in the middle. So if there's any sort of pooling, it's going to sit in the middle, and the color will be the deepest in the middle. And then from here, it's just sort of push it down and make sure you cover the electricity conduit here as well. So I'll just do one more example so we can see. And just choose the spot there and push it across. See, it's just the multiple pushing across is what, or multiple layering is what really starts to bring the color out when you paint blades in this way. So you can really start to see it here. If I pull it back to here, not too bad now. It's a bit hard to see, I think, just due to the lighting and all that here. But when you see it in contrast next to like another model, so if I pull an ultramarine here and I've got the blue sitting next to it, hopefully you can sort of see that on there. The green looks pretty good. So there's an ultramarine there. So you can start to see the colors looking a little bit different and popping against each other. So yeah, this is going to look pretty good by the end of it, I reckon. So let's keep going and pushing and pulling that color. Some of that's actually dry now, so I might be able to keep this rolling so you can see it in operation. So here we go, just pulling it across. That's all it is. It seems pretty simplistic, doesn't it? Once you start to do it. The hardest bits later on. You gotta have a bit of a steady hand to do some highlighting. But it's almost just like highlighting any other normal thing. So here we go, just pulling that across here. There we go. Looking good. And just here. Get it into there, it's very good too. All right, so when that dries, I'll just probably add one more layer of that, and then I'll start moving into the next lot of colors. All right guys, that's dried now and you can really start to see the color coming through. So the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get the Sybarite Green, and I'm going to start to mix it in with the Warpstone. So this just creates the next sort of blending layer. There we go, it's looking pretty good. And of course I add it onto the palette as much as I can. There we go. Wash the paint off. Now I'm going to add, yet again, Lahmian medium to the mix. It's important we get a good mix of Lahmian medium into there. Make sure there's a lot of flowing with this. Alright, so I want to get most of this off my brush. So you can sort of see that just there, getting most of that off my brush. I'll try and focus it in on there a little bit. So as you can see, there's really not much on here. Virtually nothing on my brush itself. And if we go back to the blade here, so all right, here we go. So first lot of layering. So I'm going to go up the blade a bit more now to this next lot, and as you can see, we're slowly making it smaller and smaller where the color contrasting goes. So it's going to going to be based more towards the base of the sword now, in the middle here, and to the top of the blade here, because that's where the light tends to reflect, and you can sort of start to see it occurring now. Flip the blade over. As you can see, it's coming up the blade here. And it's coming in the middle here. And we're going to focus most of this sort of along the base of the blade here. And there, it's starting to sort of dry, but you can see it really taking shape, and it is looking really good at the moment. So I've just got to let this dry, because it's a bit more on there than normal. So yeah, as you can see, it's really starting to bring out the colors along here. So the focal points are essentially here, along the base here, and along the top here. They're the areas where you really want to start to focus this light, essentially, or where the brightest colors start to happen. So the brighter colors pushing up the blade towards the middle and towards the pommel and hilt of the sword. It's the same on this side. So when this model is placed normally, the light will be hitting the top of it. Now, once we finish with these colors here, there's still actually a lot more to go. So like I said, this is a very patient sort of job when you paint swords like this. So really only save them for your characters. Or if you're using an airbrush, you can obviously use an airbrush to do this as well. But because I am Bloody Brush Studios, I only use a brush to do everything. So that's my reason for doing that. So I'll let this dry, and then I'll come back to you when I do the next layer. Alrighty guys, now we're on to the just a little bit more of this color. So had to wait a little bit for it to dry to move on, but here we go. So get most of it off your brush. Just remember, that's the cardinal rule here. And as you can see, we're just gonna, yet again, push it across. A little bit more, push it across. So there's a little bit on here, so I'm just trying to position it more towards the center to dry. And then down here, and we just push it across. That's looking pretty good. Flip it over. And just on this side here. Hopefully you can see that. And we just push it across. Here in the middle, we push it across. There we go, that's just drying now. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get a bit more to here, and just for this bit here, because this is the most prominent, just get it back up across again. So probably along the top here you want a few layers just to really get this bit going. That's not looking too bad at the moment, so I'll just get that back into focus. Problem with shooting on an iPhone. As you can see here, there's a lot of liquid drying in the middle, so this is actually really hard to move because that's starting to dry now. So you don't want to push too much of it away. There we go. That's going to create like a bit of a focal point there though, which is pretty good. But we still need to build up a few more layers there, so it's not the be all and end all of that yet. Now it's still a little bit dark around this bit, so we're going to get a bit more onto here and just start to build it up around the base there. Okay. Just a bit there. Alright, I'll let that dry, and then we're going to move on to the next bit. Alright Alright guys, so what we're going to do now is add a bit more green into this mix here. A few hairs on there, I'm going to clear those out. So let's get some of that Lahmian medium into action here. Okay, so this is the Sybarite green that we've really started to paint. So this will get the brightness going. So just get a bit more of that off the brush. And let's drag it across here in the middle. Here, really start to bring it up. And keep building this up here. As you can start to see, we're really getting some contrasting colors here, which is nice. So we just need to keep building this up though. So this is where a little laborious bit gets in. We're just going to keep building this up. Adding a bit more into the center here as well. Here. Okay, now we're just going to do a bit more of just pure Sybarite. So get that to there. And add some Lahmian medium to it. Alright. It's all pretty much just drying now, so. Onto there, and just into here. Now we just need to wait for this to dry. This will take a little bit of time and we'll come back as soon as that's done. All right guys, so we're starting to get there. Now it looks like you sit here and look at this and go, where is this all sort of going to? There's a little bit more we've still got to go before we finish this blade. There's actually a lot more to go. So what we're going to do now is do some tying in. So what I'm going to do is get the Sybarite green, and using my extra small artificer brush, get it onto the wet palette. Now I'm going to get most of this off the brush using the wet palette. Now I'm going to start tying the colors in by painting down the base of the sword here. So we're starting to tie a lot of the colors in, and just around the side. This goes all the way to the hilt. This goes along here. You want to be as smooth as you can with this. Now this is where you're going to have a bit of a steady hand to do this, but it doesn't have to be 100%. Now you need it up along the top of the sword here as well. Almost just like you're highlighting any normal sword that you paint. Just want to make sure that color is sitting there good. Hopefully you can sort of see this here. Apologies if I drop off camera a little bit for this, it's a bit hard to paint. Alright, I'll just shift myself over. Now this is going to be one of the harder bits to do. I'll do it sort of, how do I want to do this? I'll do it here. Now you're going to have to get the sort of contrast of the blade a little bit here. And you want to go down the middle. take your time with this. You really want to take your time with this because it's a bit hard to fix if you don't do it right. You really want to make sure that you water down your paint so your flow is good. And you're going to have to do this twice as well. So I'm just pulling it down through the middle. And there we go, so that's that done through there. So this actually starts to tie a lot of the model together. Now you also want to make sure you can see some of that Sybarite through this bit here. There we go. So this is some of the hardest bits you're going to do when painting this, but you can see it actually starts to bring the model together a little bit more, brings the sword together. Now you need to do it on the opposite side too. So you want to make sure that paint's nice and thin, and here we go. So I'm going to start from down here this time. There we go. I've done it down the middle here now. I'm not 100% happy with it yet, so let's get a bit more. Let's make sure that paint is nice and thin. And we're just going to paint down. Okay, there we go. Now, we also want to make sure that we're able to see it up through here. Now this actually starts to bring these colours in together. Down through here. And it makes it seem a bit sharp. Makes the blade actually seem really sharp, which I think is cool. Go through there. Okay, now what you can also do, because we're using Sybarite Green, and Sybarite Green was the sort of last colour used, you can actually use it to blend in a bit through here. So if the colour's not exactly matching, you can now just sort of drag it along and blend it through there. Blend it through here. Blend it up at the top of the blade as well. So are we still done yet? No, we're not. I can tell you that right now. Just up at the top here. Just blend it in just a little bit there. Okay, so we're partway there. Starting to get there with the blade. As you can see, it's looking a little bit sharper now. Does it mean we're done? No, it does not. Now, also try and pick up little bits and pieces where it just doesn't seem right. So just along the bottom here, where there's a bit of gaps and stuff like that, you just probably want to blend the bottom of your blade in with that there, and up through the middle. Just little gaps like that just don't look right. Fix them up. Fix all that stuff up if you can now, because we've still got a few more colours to go when doing this. There we go. Alright, and we're going to come back with the next bit of colour. Alright guys, so we're sort of here. The next thing we're going to do is actually going to use some Ulthuan Green. And so we're going to pull this onto the palette here. We probably don't need, only need about that. And now we're going to use some Lahmian medium, and we're going to water this down quite a bit. So what this is now going to do is we're going to sort of try and blend all these colours all together by just using one big glaze over the top. And this should sort of just bring everything together. So you only want this very, very light. You don't want it to be heavy, you don't want it to use to sort of run into recesses and things like that. All this is doing is just bringing the colours together. That's all it is doing. And what it'll do is anything that's super bright will actually start to bring it down. So as you can see here, that's now looking a little bit better. Okay, so when that dries, you can add another one if it still hasn't blended properly, but I think that's looking pretty good at the moment. So next will be the next little highlights to really make the blade start to look sharp. All right, team, now this is pretty much dried along here. So we've still got a few things left to do to sort of make the blade work. So we're almost there, but there's a few things we still have to do. So the next color is going to be Ulthuan Grey. And we're just going to get a blob of this and put it onto the wet palette. There we go. Now we're going to get the tiniest, I mean tiniest bit of Sybarite green and mix it into it. It's going to be virtually nothing because I don't want this being too grey, too white. That's what we're doing. It's just going to have a little bit just to sort of pull it in together. We're going to even water this down even though it's on a wet palette, because this really needs to flow now. Because what we're going to do is we're going to highlight along the middle of the blade and the side of the blade. Now this is going to be really hard to do, but this is how the blade ends up looking sharp. So apologies if I sort of drop off camera a little bit here trying to do this, but sort of what we got to do. So you really don't want much paint on here, but you still want enough on there for it to flow. So let's do with the tip. So that's gone straight through the middle there like that. So it's pretty tough to do. I'll probably have to go back and neaten up some bits as well. Probably from this angle here, because some are a little bit easier to hit along this way. So here we go. Let's see if I can do that here. There we go, that's it, straight through the middle of the blade there. Now next is the points of the blade. So side like that. And sort of up on top here as well. Starting to make this blade look sharp. Just up on top here. There we go, that's starting to get there now. Alright, reverse of the blade. There we go, that's sort of gone through the middle there. Now, as you can see, it's probably a little bit harsher around here, so we're just going to fix that up by just making the colour a bit bolder through here. That should sort of match it. A little bit of wonk, but that's okay. And then we just want to get that along here. And And there we sort of have it. That's the blade there. Now there's a few other things we've got to do to make it work. So some of the other things we've got to do are some sort of reflective lines or sort of like gleams in the blade. So you can sort of just choose a midpoint. If you run through there like that. Do a bit of a X pattern. Gives it some gleam. You can also have it in another point. Through there, it's not too bad. And then also up on top. Probably don't need anything there. So sort of where it crosses over here. Just drag it over lightly. That's all it needs. Doesn't need anything too special. Sometimes something in the darker bits as well. Just to give it the sharpness. There we go. So what I'm going to do now is probably just paint some of the hilt and things like that, and the power blade there, the power source, just to make this whole thing pop a little bit more, so you can sort of see it in action a bit better, because it does still look a little bit bland at this stage, but once you do those little bits and pieces, it makes it look much better. So we'll be right back once we finish that. Okay guys, there we have it. That is the power sword done. So I've painted the hilts with Retributor armor, and then just watched it with a bit of Reichland flesh shade, and there's the reverse of the sword. So this will be on my Gravis armored Space Marine Captain for my Primaris army. So hopefully this blade will look pretty good with him when he's painted up as a whole. But yeah, that's pretty much it for now. That's how the blade looks. I hope you've learned something from this. It's just a lot of patience painting these, and this is still done pretty quick. I only did this in about an hour and a bit, something like that. So it does take a lot of work to paint swords like this, and there's still a lot I've got to learn as well. But that's all done by brush, no airbrush at all. Yeah, so that's that. So if there's anything else you want to see me paint, see me do, just let me know. A lot of my stuff is designed towards sort of beginner to medium painters, because while I paint alright, I'm still not one of those freaks that's sitting out there doing the really, really cool stuff. So yeah, if there's anything you want me to show you how to do, how I do it, let me know, and I'll try and put it together. So enjoy. Hope you enjoy that. Hope you found it useful, and I'll see you soon.